If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to MINDSHOCK True Crime. Another back-to-back episode in the Steven Avery series. This is episode 28, Framing Janda. This is something that's I've discussed in the past a little bit, but it really needs a central focus here on the state's narrative that Steven Avery did this cremation job with sorcery type powers where he reduced a human to cremains, and yet plastic cell phone fragments remained intact and all these other things. Obviously, he went around, according to the state, sprinkling remains all over Redonce, Manitowoc property, the gravel pit, and then back to his own property, and then he sprinkled the remains in his sister's burn barrels. And I'm going to examine what that entails and what they allege Steven Avery was thinking or not thinking, and which of his personalities was doing what. Some of them might be psychic. So, yeah, just the mind shocks don't stop coming in this case. If you enjoyed the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. If you like the podcast, hit the like button and share it across social media platforms, of which you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get top priority for case topic co-podcaster requests. All right, so this is something that from the get-go doesn't make a lot of sense. So Steven Avery has a history of being framed by Manitowoc. So what's the allegation here? That Avery, let's say, just for the sake of argument, let's throw all rhyme and reason and all logic out the window and say somehow he did kill Teresa Hallback and reduced her to cremains in the manner which the state alleges, even though obviously the temperature in the burn barrel would have to be much higher and burn for a much longer period of time, of which the legend of the bonfire, which grew with time. Originally, there was no bonfire so in the burn pit. So, yeah, we went over that on So-Called Evidence. If you haven't checked out those podcasts, check those out. But let's pretend. Let's just pretend and play in this fairy tale world of Ken Kratz where all of this actually happened. Let's pretend. Let's pretend. So that all happened. Now, what does Avery do? He's going to put the remains in his sister's burn barrel because he either doesn't like her, wants to frame her for some reason, or does he really think no one's going to look there? How do we try to match up what Ken Kratz has crafted with his fairy tales? How do we match this up? And of course, the state and other state officials, through these coerced confessions and all these things where they concocted this just incredibly bizarre narrative that doesn't match any kind of known laws of physics or even common sense. But we're playing pretend in this world. It's a scary world, but we're playing pretend in it. So do they think, so Steven Avery, let's say if he's trying to get away with it, or one of his personalities is trying to get away with it, he puts the cremains in his sister's burn barrel. So he must know they're going to be found, right? Or does he not think anybody's going to search the last known location of where a photographer was supposed to take photographs of Barb Janda's van? And of course, he went around telling everybody that Teresa Hallback was going to be on his property and was on his property. Strange behavior for someone who's trying to get away with it. But okay. Now, other people point to the fact that for whatever reason, he thought he wouldn't be looked at as a suspect because he was feeling invincible or something. That's not, the lengths guilters go to and the straws they grasp, the mental gymnastics they have to do to try to justify Avery being guilty or even theoretically guilty. But again, let's play pretend. Let's play along. Let's play pretend. Let's drop our IQ to single digits and play pretend with the narrative. But now, what's the end game here? Because let's say law enforcement finds the cremains in Barb Janda's burn barrel, or various burn barrels. Even if Manitowoc thinks Barb Janda somehow is guilty, or Scott Tadaiche, or Bobby Dassey, or whatever the case may be. Let's say they believe that. Let's say they bought it. So Avery put the remains, and now they magically are going to think that Barb Janda or Scott Tadeuch are guilty. Why would they not frame Avery? He's already been through this before. Obviously, he knows they're going to pin on him no matter what, right? Because look at the history of Manitowoc and Steven Avery. Even in the cat incident, which no, I will not stop bringing it up, because in the extremely biased Making a Murderer Netflix documentary, where they only went over about 1% of the shadiness of Manitowoc and state officials, they maintain the narrative that Steven Avery himself picked up the cat, threw it in the fire. They didn't even reference the police reports where Janda, not Janda, but Janda, admitted to picking up the cat and throwing it in the fire. This is in a handwritten police statement. And of course, Manitowoc rewrote it, and in the report put they threw the cat, and then Steven Avery himself the only one punished, because that's Manitowoc justice. And then of course the 85 frame up, Penny Bernstein, we know all about that, went over that in the earlier episodes. If you haven't checked out all the episodes, check them out. Quite informative, objective, neutral, with logic and reason at the forefront in typical MINDSHOCK fashion, which we're doing right now as well. Like, we're trying to follow the state's narrative in assuming that Steven Avery himself did kill Teresa Hallback and put her remains in the Janda burn barrel. To what end? Because if he's going around and sprinkling it on Redance or the gravel or the Manitowoc County gravel pit, I mean, that makes kind of sense, where if he would dump it there away from his own property, it's far enough. But what's the logic? Again, if Steven Avery has all these different multiple personalities, some of them are psychic, some of them try to get himself caught, it still doesn't quite, even going through all that, it still doesn't quite make sense. Why would he put some cremains in the Janda burn barrel? Because our guilters, Ken Kratz, the state, all these illogical people, are they alleging that Steven Avery fully believed that law enforcement was not corrupt and would not frame him? Or would not, even if they believed that he was innocent? So in putting the remains in the Janda burn barrel, like, I've never heard this explained, and obviously guilters haven't really given logical explanations for anything, but this specifically, if you're a guilter, respond in the comment section. Please let us know the line of reasoning here. Because even if Avery's guilty, and even if he expects them to believe that by placing certain cremains in the Janda burn barrel, that, let's say Manitowoc bought it and they think that Barb Janda and Tadaiche are guilty. So they're still going to go after Avery. He's got the lawsuit, their depositions in place. Even someone with a very low IQ, would they really expect corrupt law enforcement they know is corrupt and have put them away before for a crime they didn't commit? Our guilters alleging, is Ken Kratz alleging that Steven Avery thinks that Manitowoc wouldn't frame him even if they believed he was innocent? I mean, it really does not make a lot of sense. And I just really wanted to address this narrative that Steven Avery was somehow looking to frame his sister. But not only that, let's buy that as well. Let's go down that rabbit hole. Let's go down that path. And let's say, yes, he's trying to frame his sister for whatever reason. Even though, again, subsequently, Avery never threw her or her sons under the bus to law enforcement, which is very, very telling as well. Because if he is trying to commit this frame up, if he is trying to frame his sister, if he were guilty, why isn't he actually trying to do that? So if any guilters are maintaining that he put remains in the Janda burn barrel to frame them, then why isn't he actually doing anything else to frame them? And if he has all these different split personalities, why is at least one of the personalities not executing that game plan to frame his sister? Because he could easily do that, right? He could say things true or untrue to make his sister and Bobby Dassey, Steve Tadeucci, he can make them look guilty, but he doesn't do that, does he? Very interesting. Instead, he takes brain fingerprint scans willingly. So, yeah, this is the nature of Steven Avery. But again, circling back around, what is the line of reasoning that Avery would believe that Manitowoc wouldn't frame him, even if they believed that Janda or Tadeucci are guilty? Obviously, what's to stop them from saying the remains were found in a different burn barrel, which they probably did. I mean, there's all this shady, funny business with the burn barrels, but let's pretend everything's all legitimate. I'm just putting the spotlight on what Ken Kratz, the state, Gilters, whoever, what they believe Steven Avery was trying to accomplish by sprinkling some remains in the Janda burn barrel. It seems like no matter the outcome, Steven Avery would still think they would try to frame him, so what's the point of doing that? Unless, of course, he didn't put the remains in the Janda burn barrel, and the barrels were switched, and there was funny business going on, which, of course, the chain of custody cannot be corroborated, so obviously protocol was not followed here. And if those cremains or remains are even of a human, they might not be of a human. They might not even be real. We don't really know anything in this case. If we're being really objective, logical, neutral, scientific, there's no irrefutable proof that Teresa Halbach is dead. Again, I think it's helpful to look at other cases because, I mean, Gilters never like to compare things, but or anybody who's maintaining that Steven Avery's guilty no matter what. But if you compare this case and what can be definitively proven in this case versus other cases, whether or not there was even a victim, it's very, very telling as to what kind of an investigation this was. I mean, the coroner wasn't even allowed on the scene. It's all quite bizarre. But yeah, I cannot think, MINDSHOCK is known, obviously, for exploring all these different theories and going down every avenue and rabbit hole, but even I'm having difficulty following the line of reasoning that if Avery's guilty, if these are the remains of Teresa Halbach, and if he put them in the Janda burn barrel, to what end? And what did he believe was going to happen? Are Ken Kratz and Gilters really asking everybody to believe that Avery would think that he wouldn't be blamed? Or they could just say that it was found in his burn barrel. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. For him to have put the remains in the Janda burn barrel, he would have to believe that the police would act lawfully and actually pursue his own sister as a real suspect. Or Tadice. We really don't know. But if that really happened or didn't happen, but to what end? And that's the real question here. And that's all I really wanted to examine in this particular podcast. But it's something that's never been adequately explained. And people are just supposed to swallow it like, yeah, he did all these things. He did the greatest cleanup job in the history of crime. Put years of dust and grime back. I mean, he killed somebody in his trailer, then in the garage, which might have had too many vehicles to even maneuver around. Nothing was ever found until many, many months later after coerced narratives were established. But what's the point in putting the cremains in the Janda burn barrel? Is he trying to frame his sister? And if so, what's the point of sprinkling all the cremains at Redon's? Is he trying to are we being asked to believe that Steven Avery's trying to create some kind of narrative where Redon is working with his sister, Barb Janda, and possibly Scotty Tadeucci, and they're going to kill Teresa Halbach and frame Avery, which, of course, that doesn't make sense either, because as I went over in the previous podcast, Full House, there was so many people coming and going while Avery himself was having countless nonchalant conversations with all these individuals. It just, no matter how you slice it, it doesn't make any sense. But with the barrels specifically, I mean, what is going on with the line of reasoning or lack thereof as to why Avery would try to frame his sister and frame Radon to push the attention away from himself. But how would that push the attention away from himself? Because he's got a $36 million lawsuit against a lot of these corrupt law enforcement and state officials. So no matter what, it would seem like it wouldn't push any attention away from him, and everything would always be twisted to make him guilty no matter what. So what's the point of this? Are we being asked to believe that Steven Avery would really believe that they would just buy it, that these other individuals killed Hallback and not himself? And if that's the case, why has he not continued with that narrative or frame up in any kind of statements or anything? It's really bizarre. Instead, he implicates his own brothers. Instead of the people he's trying to frame, if he's trying to frame them by putting the remains in the Janda burn barrel? How does any of this make any sense? Oh, it's all quite mind-shocking. I don't really know what to make of any of it. And if Brendan Dassey, if he could have also threw Brendan Dassey under the bus, which he never did. But how, if he's trying to implicate Brendan Dassey, is he saying Brendan Dassey would put the cremains in the Janda burn barrel to frame himself or his own mother? I mean, I'm just trying to make sense of the logic in putting the cremains in the Janda burn barrel. How does it make any sense? Again, if anyone out there has any kind of a logical, reasonable explanation of these actions of Steven Avery or one of his personalities, which may or may not have been psychic, and is Steven Avery the love child of MacGyver and a Navy SEAL to be going around pulling all this off? And again, what is the reasoning for trying to frame his own sister, but then not following up on it and performing all these contrary actions? Or is Steven Avery one of these world record holders in multiple personalities where he's got like 100 different personalities? So that particular personality that tried to frame his sister, it only did so in that one moment and then never reared its head ever again. And that's why we can't make sense of it. Is that what Ken Kratz and Gilters are asking us to believe? Because what else would explain that? I really don't know. This is quite a mind-shocking case. Once again, if you enjoy the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. If you like the podcast, hit the like button. Share it across social media platforms. Not to just bring awareness to this particular wrongful conviction, but all the other wrongful convictions out there, of which there are obviously very, very many. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case, topic, co-podcaster requests. Questions, comments, thoughts, theories, rebuttals, debunkings, thoughts of any kind. Leave them in the comment section. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.